Welcome to Learn Commerce PU online classes. Don't forget to like our video and subscribe our YouTube channel for all the updates.
Hello students, welcome to the second PUC English online class. In today's class, let us discuss the 7th lesson, that is The Gardener by P. Lankesh. In the lesson, P. Lankesh wants to tell us about the rivalry between Tammanna and Basavaya. Here, the rivalry becomes the driving force to achieve both in Tammanna and Basavaya's life, and how it leads a conflict and a competition between Basavaya and Tammanna that we are discussing in this lesson. In the beginning of the story, P. Lankesh, he is narrating the incident in the third person. And later he directly takes the first person to narrate the story after one page. He is taking the first person to narrate the story. First he tells the story of an old man. Here, let me read the lesson and explain along with that. The elaboration can only impoverish this account and make it less authentic. I conceived this story in a flash. It has its genesis in my chance encounter with an old man. He was standing in a coconut grove near Chendraipatna. His eyes were suffused with the strange memories and native intelligence. He stood there, a tall figure, hair gone grey, a long beak-like nose and strong muscular arms. In one hand, a spade used to tend coconut trees, a newspaper tucked under his arm. He was a labourer, overseer and philosopher, all rolled into one. This is an introduction to the story, and also this is an introduction to the protagonist of the story. So here P. Lankesh, he tells that he comes to an encounter, or he comes in contact with an old man, and he was standing near the coconut grove in Chendraipatna, and that man was looking experienced or well versed person in agriculture. And here the gesture of the man, such as his eyes were suffused. His eyes were suffused in the sense they were spread with the strange memories and native intelligence. He was his eyes could tell us his strange memories and native intelligence. So here he stood there, and it is also explained his figure, that he was tall, and he was his hair was grey, then he has a long beak nose and muscular arms. This elaboration that tells us about the old man, about his figure, or about his physical appearance, and the way he was standing, that was the newspaper that was tucked under his arm, and he was looking as labourer, overseer and philosopher. Here three roles were rolled into one. Three characters are rolled in one person, that is the old man was seen as a labourer, overseer and philosopher. So he came to this garden one day after walking hundreds of miles. The owner of this plantation needed a person exactly like him. A few words were exchanged. The old man stayed on. He was really useful. He was well versed in agriculture and could understand the problems of the workers. The petty thefts in the garden came to an end. The income from the garden improved dramatically. There was a perceptible change in the lifestyle of the owner. The plantation expanded, but the owner became lethargic and shied away from hard work. His wife found all this very strange. She found it hard to decide whether the old man's arrival was for the better or for worse. Her husband's wealth and social prestige had risen higher. He acquired a number of friends in the next town and an equal number in his own village. Even though he had precious little to do, his life became crowded with colorful events. She became apprehensive about this adultery and umpteen other vices, cultivated lately thanks to his newly acquired cloth. Their farm, which was merely 10 acres, had grown beyond their imagination. That was fine, but their life also was gradually getting out of hand. So, in this paragraph, P. Lankesh is explaining how after the arrival of the old man, how the plantation was grown and how the nature and the attitude of the owner of the plantation is changed. The owner of the plantation in Chandrayapatna, he was looking for an worker who is exactly like this old man, and that old man had all the eligibilities that the owner of the plantation was looking for. And here the old man was considered, or P. Lankesh, he is telling that he is overseer, laborer and also a philosopher. So, here since he was well versed in agriculture and agricultural activities, he could manage that responsibility very easily. Here what P. Lankesh is saying in this paragraph is that the owner of the plantation, he wanted exactly a man like a old man, and here when the old man came to the plantation and asked for the work, the few words were exchanged and he was given the job or work in the plantation. The old man stayed there itself. So, it was really useful to the owner. Since old man stayed in the plantation itself, it was useful to the owner because he was well versed in agriculture. The old man was well versed in agriculture and could understand the problems of other workers. Since he was a worker, he could understand the problems of other workers. And also till there were petty thefts used to happen in the garden. After the arrival of the old man, those petty thefts came to an end. As a result, the income of the owner that was gradually increased. And there was a perceptible change in the lifestyle of the owner. He started to believe the old man and he started to relax himself from the duties of the farm or or the plantation. Then the plantation expanded as the income increased, the plantation also expanded. But the owner became lethargic, he became lazy, he did not have the same energy or same interest in his work and shied away from hard work. He stopped his hard work. His wife found all this very strange, but the wife of the owner of plantation, she found all these things strange. Why? Because her husband not only he shied away from the work, but some changes in his attitude his wife recognized. She found it hard to decide whether the old man's arrival was for good or for better or for worse. because her husband's wealth and social prestige had risen higher, and he acquired number of friends in his town and also in out of the village. Then his life became crowded with colorful events. The life of the owner became life of the owner filled with the colorful events, and his wife became apprehensive in the sense worried about his adultery and umpteen other vices. When the income increased, when the prestige increased, the man started to do the things which are not legal. He started to do some of the illegal things, such as he started to do adultery and other umpteen criminal activities. Then their farm, which was merely 10 acres, had grown beyond their imagination. Earlier it was just 10 acres, later it grown beyond the imagination. That was fine, but their life was also gradually getting out of hand. So, when the income increased, not only the plantation expanded, but the life of the owner of the plantation also that was out of his control. When she was in fix, she refers to the wife of the owner. Like this, one day the old man met her and behaved as though he knew all about her plight. He smiled at her and brought down an offering to tender coconuts from a nearby tree. He sat on the embankment of the wall, embankment in the sense the what we say katte, bavi katte. She had no alternative and she sat next to him. The sun was slipping away into the western horizon. His rays were reaching the walls of the well through the foliage of coconut, mango and jackfruit trees. The old man began his narrative. In a far off place, once there was a man called Tamanna. He had everything, 10 acres of wetland, a comfortable house, people too ready to do his bidding. The most important among all his possessions was his rival Sangoji. So, here the wife of the owner, she was worried about her husband and she was thinking about whether the arrival of the old man is good or bad. At the time, old man notices the woman and he comes to her and speaks to her, and he tries to convince the woman about her husband, and he starts to convince her. He starts to narrate his own story. The old man, he starts to narrate his own story in the form of a story. There he tells that in a far off place once there was a man called Tammanna, and here Tammanna is none other than the old man. He had everything, 10 acres of wetland. Here Tammanna possessed 10 acres of wetland, a comfortable house, people too ready to do his bidding. The most important among all his possessions was his rival Sangoji. So, here what the old man narrates the story in that he is telling that the protagonist of the story is Tammanna. He had 10 acres of wetland and he was well settled in his life. He had possessed everything, and among all his possession, the important one is his rivalry. See here, the rivalry also is the possession of a man, how it is considered. Okay. So, here Tammanna's most important possession is his rival Sangoji. So, this is what in the beginning of the story P. Lankesh introduces, or he gives the background to the story, where the story begins and how it begins. To convince the woman or the owner of the plantation, he is narrating this story. And what is the story? How the story continues, how the rivalry between Tammanna and Sangoji that continues. Let us see in the next session. We discussed the introduction to the story The Gardener. P. Lankesh, he narrates the story of an old man. An old man, he narrates the story to the woman in the plantation, or to the owner's wife. And here the old man introduces Tammanna and his rival Sangoji. In the previous section we had seen that. Let us see in this class how the old man, he describes the story of Basavanna and Sangoji. Let us see. Tammanna and Sangoji in this class. So here, as it is said, Tammanna's most important possession is his rival Sangoji. Now, Tammanna is none other than the old man, I said. Now, the old man is telling the story to the wife of, to the owner's wife, to the plantation owner's wife. And here she was not interested in listening, but the old man makes her to sit and listen to the story. And here the old man, he used the name Sangoji as a fake name, but when he was narrating the story, he was fumbled. He could not narrate with the fake name of his rival. So, he tells the real name of his rival, that is Basavaya. In the next paragraph it is said, no, his name was not Sangoji, it was Basavaya. He expressed this amazement at how facts take on such varied guises when they are narrated as a fiction. So, here Tammanna, he is the protagonist of the story. Let that be. Let us assume his name was Basavaya. He was Tammanna's rival. If Tammanna bought 4 more acres adjacent to his land, Basavaya also followed suit. If one had 10 friends, the other acquired 15 admirers. To begin with, all this looked like healthy competition. However, gradually it rose to such a pitch that there was no land left in the village for them to buy. All land belonged to either Tammanna or Basavaya. Tammanna had 1000 acres and Basavaya owned 800. Basavaya could not tolerate this. He sent word to Tammanna asking him to sell 200 acres. Tammanna did not agree. He was prepared to buy all the land that belonged to Basavaya. Basavaya was mad with rage. He went along with his people and acquired 200 acres of Tammanna's land forcibly. A fence was built around that land. Tammanna could not tolerate this invasion. So, here what happens? Tammanna, he possessed 10 acres of land in the village, and his rival Basavaya, he possessed 8 acres of adjacent land. Is a fertilized or cultivated land. If one had 10 friends, the other acquired 15 admirers. So, here there is a competition, not only having the land but also having the friends. If one acres 10, then another also want to have 10 acres of land. Then here Basavaya, if he Tammanna, if he possess 10 friends, then Basavaya wanted to possess 15 friends. There is a competition. To begin with, this all looked like a healthy competition. Earlier it was a healthy competition. Gradually it rose to such a pitch that there was no land left in the village for them to buy. So, all land they purchased and there was no piece of land was left. Then now Tammanna had 1000 acres and Basavaya owned 800 acres. Tammanna had more, Basavaya had less. Basavaya could not tolerate this. He was mad with rage and he asked Tammanna to give 200 acres of land to make his land possession more. Tammanna was not ready to give. Who will give? Isn't? So, Tammanna did not give, but Basavaya, he was mad with rage and he prepared to buy all that here. When Basavaya asked, Tammanna did not agree to give. Instead of that, Tammanna he prepared himself to buy all the land, that is 800 acres of land which is belonged to Basavaya. He wanted to buy that land. Who? Tammanna. Basavaya was mad with rage. So, he went along with his people and acquired 200 acres of Tammanna's land forcibly. So, he encroached Tammanna's land and forcibly he acquired 200 acres of land. Then a fence was built around that land. Tammanna could not tolerate this invasion. So, Tammanna he could not tolerate this. He wanted to take a revenge on Basavaya very strongly, where Tammanna could not get it back, or he could not find any other ways to take revenge on him. Tammanna was thinking about such kind of a beautiful plan. By now the quarrel between these two had stuck in all their supporters. Tammanna was advised by his supporters about the various means available for getting back his land. There was the court of law. One could also take recourse to the police. If you did not want that, there were many number of persons ready to attack Basavaya. Such a war had become virtually inevitable, but Tammanna was in search of a method that could annihilate Basavaya completely. He hit upon the idea of composing all his experience in the form of ballads and singing them. Now the rivalry between Tammanna and Basavaya started moving away from things that were visible towards an invisible abstract domain. So, here what happens? Anyone will not keep quiet if the land is forcibly acquired. So, here what the supporters of Tammanna they said that definitely they will support him if he go to acquire the land back from Basavaya. Also they suggested to take the help of police, but Tammanna was not ready for all these things. He wanted to defeat Basavaya permanently, where he could not compete back with the Tammanna. Such kind of idea he was searching, and Tammanna found a beautiful idea, that is composing all his experience in the form of ballads and singing them. So, he finds the way to defeat Basavaya, that is the art or poetry or literature. He is choosing the way, that is the literature, to defeat or to annihilate Basavaya completely. And here he gets or puts together all his experiences and composes the poem and in the form of ballads, and he sings them. So, now the rivalry between Tammanna and Basavaya started moving away from things that were visible towards an invisible abstract domain. So, now the rivalry was changed, or the rivalry that was seen, and now it was changed to unseen, or to the invisible abstract domain, some of the general ideas. So, here Tammanna he started to write he started to compose the ballads and sing them. Basavaya had no answer to this. He also tried to sing but could not. He performed his agricultural task more diligently. This too was no answer to Tammanna. Tammanna's reputation started spreading all around. His song started making mention of Basavaya's cruelty and his meanness. Scholars of folklore were after him. Critics started analyzing and translating his songs and thus earned their share of fame. Basavaya helplessly watched all this, consumed by anger. He encroached more and more into Tammanna's land. Tammanna did not notice any of these activities. Art had become the raison d'etre of his life. He was felicitated as the best poet of his times. Now what happened here? Basavaya had no answer to this. Basavaya, he did not have answer to the way that was chosen by Tammanna to take revenge on Basavaya. What to do? Basavaya was not talented. He was not practiced, or he did not have that capacity or ability to compose poems or ballads or sing. He also tried to sing but he could not, but he performed his agricultural task more diligently in the sense he showed more care and put more efforts to compete with the Tammanna's literature. This too was no answer to Tammanna, but Basavaya failed to compete with the Tammanna. Tammanna's reputation started to spread all around. His reputation day by day that was started to spread all around. And here Tammanna's songs, he mentioned Basavaya's cruelty and meanness in his poems. So again he got more popularity or publicity among his village people, among them or village. Critics started analyzing and translating, and even the scholars of folklore were after him. So here the scholars of folklore, they were after Tammanna, and scholars and criticizers, they start to appreciate him, or they start to speak about his literature. Then Basavaya helplessly watched all this. Day by day Tammanna's reputation was developing, or it was increasing, and helplessly Basavaya was watching that. As a form of revenge, Basavaya started to encroach more and more land from Tammanna. But Tammanna did not notice that, and he indulged himself in the literary activities, that is composing poems and ballads and singing them. Art had become the raison d'etre of his life, raison d'etre in the sense reason of his life. He was felicitated as the best poet of his times. Tammanna was felicitated as the best poet of his times. This made Basavaya to burn more, or to feel rivalry more towards Tammanna. And here Basavaya was trying all the ways to take revenge on to take revenge on Tammanna and to defeat him. This is what we can see in this session, and in the next session let us see how Basavaya he is competing with Tammanna by acquiring wealth, and how Tammanna he reacts to Basavaya's competition. We will see in the next class.
Don't forget to like our video and subscribe our YouTube channel for all the updates.